welcome back again to our ongoing series on the glories of the 12 forests of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Let us begin. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Pishtaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Pacharine, Nivishesha Shunyavadi, Paschatade Shatarine. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, we're continuing with our grand tour around the 60 billion holy places in Sri Vrindavan Dham. Hopefully, in the long run, we'll discover who we are as eternal spirit souls, what our very intimate, loving relationship is with Krishna, and someday how we fit into the Vrindavan pastimes by Srila Prabhupada's grace. Of course, for now, we're content just to know that in principle, we're simply servants of the Lord. There's that very famous verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, chapter 20, verse 108. Jivera Sruphoya Krishnera Nityadas, Krishnera Tatashta Shakti, Beta Beta Prakash. Quote, it is the living entity's constitutional position to be an eternal servant of Krishna, because he is the marginal energy of Krishna and a manifestation simultaneously one with and different from the Lord, unquote. So after millions of lives of forgetfulness, that's a lot to comprehend. And we can take great satisfaction in knowing and realizing that we are servants of the Lord. I was reading the other day that after Hanuman had been captured while on his secret mission to find Sita Devi in Lanka, he was brought before Ravana and a large assembly of his very demoniac ministers. And as Hanuman, bound by ropes and chains, was forcibly brought into that assembly hall, everyone, all the demons, were stunned to see that he was no ordinary monkey. It's written. This is not some ordinary monkey, they were thinking, because they could see. Although monkeys are quite chanchala, restless, it's described, this monkey Hanuman was quite sober. And although monkeys are generally quite dirty and impure, Hanuman was param pavitra. Param pavitra means extremely pure and very clean. And although monkeys are quite foolish, Hanuman was Jnaninam Agra Ganyam. Jnaninam Agra Ganyam. It means foremost amongst jnanis. Foremost amongst jnanis, or learned persons. Now everyone was like, whoa, really taken aback. But the person who was most astonished was Ravana. Ravana, the 10-headed demon. So he said to Hanuman, Kashtvam kape? Kashtvam kape? Who are you, oh monkey? Now it's really interesting. When questioned like this, Hanuman became puzzled. Well, how is that? Well, it's written because he's not used to thinking about himself, because he only thinks of Lord Ram. There's that famous verse to always remember the Lord and never forget the Lord. So that's Hanuman. He always remembers Ram and never forgets Ram. So he said to Ravana, Sir, you're asking who I am. I think it's better if you ask me, who is Lord Ram? Like that I can speak for 9 days straight. I think it's better you ask me, who's Lord Ram? Like that, I'll speak for 9 days straight. Ravana was not happy with that answer. So I was reading, he roared. Ravana roared. "You foolish, furry beast, tell me, who are you? If you cannot answer this question, I will have you killed immediately." So Hanuman, he thought for a moment, but again, because he never thinks of himself, he only thinks about Lord Ram, he didn't know what to reply. But Shastra says, because his life depended on it, and in his mind, even more important, rescuing Sita also depended on it, Lord Ram came to his rescue. There's that famous verse in Ramayana, famous verse. Sakrit eva prapano yash tavasmiti chayachate abhayam sarvada tashmai dadam yetad vratam mama. Lord Ram speaking. It is my vow that if one only once seriously surrenders unto me, saying, "My dear Lord, from this day on I am yours," and prays to me for courage, I shall immediately award courage to that person, and he will always remain safe from that time on. Jai Sri Ram. So Lord Ramachandra, in Hanuman's heart, inspired Hanuman to look down at his hand, where he was holding the jewel which Lord Ram had given him to give to Sita. The idea being that if Hanuman as a big monkey came before Sita, she would be afraid. But Ram said, "Show her this jewel which belongs to me, and she'll understand that you're my servant coming to rescue her." So he's holding this jewel. So at that very moment, he's looking at the jewel in his hand, inspired by Lord Ram. Sita Devi appeared in that jewel. Sita Devi. She appeared in the jewel. And she spoke to Hanuman and told him how to reply to Ravana's question. So Hanuman, smiling broadly and raising both arms in the air, he loudly proclaimed to Ravana and his hordes of Rakshasas and demons. He said, "Yes, I know who I am. I know who I am." Then he said, "Dasoham koshalendrasya." Famous. Dasoham koshalendrasya. I am the servant of Rama, who is the Lord of Koshala. Koshala is actually the name of the entire kingdom of Lord Ramachandra. Koshala. That's the entire kingdom. And Ayodhya is the capital city. So Dashoham Koshalen Dasya. I'm the servant of Ram, who's the Lord of Koshala. So hearing that, Ravana, the word used is he became disgusted. And he said, "What? You're a servant? You're a slave?" He said, "Seeing you, I assumed you would be the king of some place, the master of many, but you're nothing more than a mere servant." So it's so nice. At that point, Hanuman started laughing very loudly. And he said to Ravana, "Sir, please look at yourself and try to realize you are also a servant. You're a servant of kama, lusty desires. You're a servant of anger. You're a servant of greed. In fact, you are the ignoble servant of merciless masters. And I, Hanuman, I am the humble servant of a most glorious master. Jai Sri Ram, Jai Sri Ram, Jai Sri Ram." And because he successfully answered Ravana's question as, who are you? Ravana couldn't carry out his challenge to kill Hanuman. All he could do was order his Rakshasas to light Hanuman's tail on fire, which ironically led to his entire kingdom being burnt to the ground. That's a wonderful pastime in Ramayana. So, as Hanuman took great satisfaction in realizing who he was and glorified Lord Ram with his words. We also take great satisfaction in the words of Chaitanya Charitamrita, that we are all eternal servants of Lord Krishna. And so we will take great pleasure in recounting more of Krishna's pastimes with his devotees today in our lecture. Pastimes that take place in our beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham, Sri Hanuman Ki. So I would like to share with all of you a very, very beautiful pastime that took place just after the coronation of Srimati Radharani as Queen of Vrindavan. I wasn't planning this. I just was reading last night and I came across this pastime. I said, this is very appropriate to give us the next lecture. So this pastime took place in an enchanting forest called Karnavan, where Krishna and his friends disguised themselves so that they could personally witness the workings of the new queen, Radharani's, government administration in this particular forest, Karnavan. In his Braja Bhakti Vilas, which we haven't quoted for a while, our beloved Srila Narayan Bhatta Goswami gives a prana mantra for this particular forest. I found it in chapter 11, verse 20. Karna Vashaya Ramyaya Yasha Kirti Surupine Namakarna Vanayaiva Punyak Yaya Varapada. He says, obeisances to the personification of good fame. Obeisances to Karnavana, which bestows piety and benedictions. Good place to visit. And as he so often does, Srila Narayan Bhatta Goswami then recommends the best time to visit this auspicious forest. He says, Kande Bhadra Shukla Triti Yayam Gato Karnavanam Shubham. He actually quotes the Skanda Purana. He says, the Skanda Purana says that one should visit Karnavana on the third day of the bright fortnight of the month of Bhadra. Now, our acharyas describe this particular forest, Karnavana, in a very beautiful way. They say that it is, and I quote, a complex of perpetually flowering groves. In other words, this forest is made of many groves of flowers. A complex of perpetually flowering groves. It means they're growing during all the 6 seasons in Sri Vrindavan. And here's the Acharya's detailed analysis. A little technical, but it's really nice, about Karnavana. Quote, Karnavana has an outer ring of 16 flower groves that encompass an inner ring of 8 flower groves. A towering, majestic flower palace stands at the center, a palace of flowers. The entire enclosure is encircled by a thick hedge of flowering trees and bushes, with only one opening, an archway of multicolored creepers. So, in effect, they're saying that, one acharya says, Karnavana is literally a flower fortress. We hear of fortresses, big stone fortresses, wooden fortresses, steel fortresses. This is a flower fortress. So, the day after her coronation as Vrindavaneshwari, Queen of Vrindavan, Sri Radha and her new administration of gopis took shelter from the midday sun in these immense flower groves of Karnavana. And Srimati Radharani was still in her royal dress, wearing a flowing cape, golden slippers, a regal crown, and decorated with strands of necklaces and brilliant rings. And she also carried her scepter, a flowing cape, golden slippers, a regal crown, strands of necklaces and brilliant rings, carrying her scepter like royalty does, the king or the queen. And it's described that her ministers, attendants, bodyguards, and gatekeepers were also dressed appropriately for their roles. So soon after Sri Radha and her retinue had arrived in Karnavana, Krishna's favorite parrot flew over this royal assembly. And then he quickly turned around and flew some distance away to where Krishna was also resting with his friends from the midday sun. And that parrot landed on Krishna's shoulder. He whispered something in his ear. Actually, he told Krishna where Radharani was in this particular forest and what they were doing, etc. So hearing that Sri Radha was in nearby Karnavana, in her new role as Queen of Vrindavan along with her administration, Krishna became very, very curious. Very curious. He wanted to see firsthand the workings of this new government, and in particular, their queen. But he realized he probably couldn't get up very close as a cowherd boy. So what he did is Krishna convinced a few of his close friends like Subal and Madhu Mangal and others to accompany him to Karnavana, masquerading as cowherd girls. Here we go again. So all his friends, let's do it, let's go. So they all dressed as gopis. They disguised themselves as gopis. And then they all set out for Karnavana. And one acharya writes that along the way, he says, this Mohini of Braja, what a beautiful statement. This Mohini of Braja, Krishna, and her friends drew very perplexed stares from people, cows, and forest creatures alike. From people, cows, and forest creatures alike. They're all looking at quite an unusual group of gopis. So when this group of gopis reached what Shastra says was the flowery gateway to Karnavana, the flowery gateway to Karnavana, stick-wielding gopi guards stopped the procession and asked the boys, dressed as gopis, why have you girls come to the fortified capital of Braja's queen? So Subal, he tried his best to answer in a feminine voice. He said, we have come to speak with the queen. We have come to speak with the queen. So nodding in recognition, the head guard inquired further, and what do you wish to say to Her Majesty? What is it you wish to say to Her Majesty? So unfortunately, Subal had not memorized his lines very well. So he stammered, let me see. But Madhu Mangala, he saved the day by cutting in. He said, we want to ask Her Majesty how she's faring. So it's described that these gopi guards had been temporarily distracted by a dark-complexioned girl at the center of this group. Obviously Krishna. But when they heard Madhu Mangala's unconvincing answer, it's described, they immediately blocked the flowery gateway to Karnavana with their sticks. And then the head gopi guard, she said, I will first consult with the Prime Minister, Lalita Saki. So then she entered the compound. It's described leaving the suspicious visitors smiling sheepishly at the other guards. So poetic. So at this point, Krishna and the cowherd boys, they huddled together for a quick conference. And Madhu Mangala whispered, the sticks those guards are carrying are really big. And Subalsaka, he added nervously, and they are very protective of their queen. But Krishna tried to reassure them by saying, let's just wait and see what the Prime Minister has to say. So then Sridham, who, as you remember, is the brother of Srimati Radharani, he spoke up. He said, if I weren't wearing this sari, I could defeat these guards all at once, but Krishna cut him off. Radharani's brother. Krishna cut him off, saying, friend, it would not become you to fight with your sister's bodyguards. It would not be becoming for you to fight with your sister's bodyguards. So while the boys were talking, this head guard informed Lalita that some very suspicious looking cowherd girls were at the gate asking to see Queen Radha. So Srimati Radharani, who was nearby, she overheard this and she inquired, who exactly are these visitors? So the guard kind of looked down and replied in an embarrassed voice, I'm sorry, I didn't ask their names. So at that point, Lalita spoke up and she said very firmly, then go now and ask them to provide not only their names, but what villages they're from and who are their families. So this gopi guard quickly returned to the gate and clearing her voice, she addressed the disguised boys. Ladies, the Prime Minister requests that you state your names, villages, and families. The boys weren't prepared for this. They didn't know. They didn't know. They didn't have gopi names, or they didn't know gopi village they came from, or like that. So hearing this, Subalsaka, it's really cute, he quickly drew his veil over his face. And so as not to be noticed, Madhu Mangal looked up at a bird that was flying by. Oh, yeah. But Ujjvala Saka, he spoke up and he said, in this glorious kingdom, we, like all Brajavasis, wish only to be known as servants of the Queen, which is so true. So these words were, nice, but that answer made the Gopi guard even more suspicious. She thought, something just isn't right about this band of unfamiliar gopis. So then the plot thickens. Sensing that these gopi guards were becoming more and more uneasy and suspicious, Subalsaka herded, or took all the disguised boys a little bit down the road. We'll get away from all that, he was thinking. And as he was taking all the boys away, he looked back and he sarcastically said, if being a lowly servant is not enough, what can be done? If being a lowly servant is not enough, what can be done? So as this, it's described, this unusual band of gopis disappeared from sight, the gopi guard gatekeepers, they all looked at each other incredulously, like, what's going on here? And then the guard who had spoken to Lalita and Sri Radha again went back into the compound to report her suspicions. But this is really nice. It's described that Sri Radha already had suspicions of her own. And how could that be? Well, because from the moment Krishna, in his disguise, had arrived at the gateway of Karnavan, she had felt a surge of loving emotions, possible only when her beloved Krishna was nearby. That's so sweet. So Radharani, she was wondering, could this be Krishna and his friends in disguise? And the Gopi guards report about the eccentric nature of these visitors only increased her suspicions. that perhaps Krishna and his friends were playing some sort of prank there. She thought like that. Maybe Krishna and his friends are playing some sort of prank. But one acharya writes, a prank Sri Radha would secretly welcome. A prank Sri Radha would secretly welcome. Sri Vrindavan ki jai. So Srimati Radharani instructed this main guard, if those gopis come back, she said, ask them again to identify themselves, and again, what is the purpose of their mission? And afterwards, bring them all here under full escort. So meanwhile, Krishna and his friends, a little bit, they walked away a little bit. They continued with their discussions what to do. A few of the gopas wanted to return to tending cows and playing games, but most were determined to complete their mission. So Krishna said, let's return to that fortress grove without fear. I'll gain access to the court by giving a false identity. Then we'll finally be able to observe how the queen conducts her affairs of state. Now at this point, Madhu Mangala, he looked back up the road at these, gopis with their big sticks, and he shook his head, oh boy. But it's written, driven by his love for Krishna, he took a deep breath and he said, all right, let's go. My Brahminical power will protect us. So the boys adjusted their gopi dresses, touched up one another's makeup, fixed each other's hair, and set out again for Karnavan, back up the road. And it's described that, this is really beautiful, their path was illuminated by Krishna's sapphire effulgence. Whew. Just keep that in your minds. Their path was illuminated by Krishna's sapphire effulgence. So once again, as the boys, disguised in their gopi dresses, approached the gopi gatekeepers, the head guard stepped forward and inquired from Krishna, as she had been instructed by Sri Radha. She said, ladies, please state again, who are you and why have all of you come here? So Krishna, he said in a very sweet voice, he said, dear lady, I am Shima Gopi of Nandagram. He's Shima Gopi of Nandagram. And these girls are my friends. We have come simply to offer our respects to the queen and to witness how she presides over her subjects. Please take us to her. Shima Gopi of Nandagram. So as Sri Radha had requested, this guard opened the flowery gate to take them to see Sri Radha. And as the cowherd boys entered the, complex of perpetually flowering groves, this forest, they all looked around and marveled at the beauty of Karnavan. Their jaws dropped when they saw slabs of precious gems that paved the ground, golden seats with soft cushions placed here, there, and everywhere, lotus swings that hung from tree branches, jeweled archways that lined the pathways, colorful flags strung together in festoons that flew everywhere, and garlands of beautiful flowers that were visible wherever one looked. They also saw gorgeously dressed, fair-faced gopis, some sitting, some moving about, performing a variety of services, as they sang beautiful songs about Sri Radha and her love for Shyamasundar. So when these boys were finally ushered into the actual court of Queen Radha, these disguised boys saw that everything was bathed in, quote, soft, comforting, golden radiance that emanated from Sri Radha, who sat gracefully upon a jeweled throne. Soft, comforting, golden radiance that emanated from Sri Radha, who sat gracefully upon a jeweled throne. So, seeing all this, the boys were speechless. And along with Krishna, they all bowed down to Vrindavaneshwari, Srimati Radharani. Then Krishna, he kind of adjusted his gopi disguise and he stepped forward. He was very nervous. And he said, quote, "Our respects to you, Srimati Radharani, Princess of Varshana and Queen of Vrindavan. Princess of Varshana and Queen of Vrindavan, we, your servants, have come to inquire about your welfare and to request a seat amongst your attendants, so that we may observe how this court grants audience to its subjects and visitors." So Sri Radha replied, "We thank you for your kind wishes. Until such times as confidential matters come before the court, you are all welcome to sit amongst the peers and observe the general matters of state." So Krishna bowed again to Srimati Radharani, and then he and his friends were escorted to a group of nearby seats. But I was reading that at such close quarters, it started becoming clear to some gopis that these new gopis might not be gopis, but cowherd boys. So then the affairs of the court began. And Sri Radha, she welcomed guests. It's described like Shamalasaki, conversed with ministers like Vishaka, and gave guidance on events such as arrangements on upcoming festivals. Meanwhile, Krishna was riveted to his seat. He was transfixed by Srimati Radharani's radiant presence, organizational skills, absolute wisdom, fair judgment, all-pervasive kindness, and affectionate dealings. He was just transfixed. He's watching her govern her kingdom. And he's just transfixed by her radiant presence, her organizational skills, her absolute wisdom, her fair judgment, her all-pervasive kindness, and affectionate dealings. So finally, just as Madhu Mangal let Krishna know that he was getting weak from hunger, Sri Radha turned to Krishna and she said, "My dearest Shama Gopi, now that you have seen the affairs of state, do you have any other requests?" So at that point, Krishna slowly rose to his feet and palms joined, his eyes brimming with tears. He said, "O Queen, I see that your dominion over your subjects is complete. You reign over their hearts as well as their bodies. Please know that your perfect dealings have purchased me forever. Now that I belong to you, heart and soul, I request that I too may reside at your lotus feet like your other maidservants." Hearing this, Sri Radhika went silent. Then she extended her right arm in a very dramatic way and kept it like that for a moment. Suddenly, Krishna's pet parrot appeared. He landed on Radha's finger and pressed his beak, like a kiss against her hand. Then Sri Radha's parrot landed on Lalita Sakhi's shoulder and whispered something in her ear. Radharani's parrot. And as that parrot did so, Lalita's eyes opened very wide. And she said angrily, "To manage the affairs of state, a queen must have spies to inform her of the activities of the citizens, as well as the movements of bordering kings, especially ill-motivated ones." Then glancing at the parrot, she continued, "And our spy," she said, "this gracious parrot, has confirmed, as we suspected, that all of you are not gopis, but cowherd boys in disguise." Everybody went, "Whoa." Then pointing to Manamangala, she added, "And this is not a pregnant girl, but a greedy brahmana." So, as many gopis present let out like loud gasps and quickly became angry, Madhumangal tugged on Krishna's arm to signal that it's time we leave. But Krishna, still mesmerized by Sri Radha's beauty, restrained him. So Madhumangal, while looking at the angry cowherd girls, he whispered to Subal, "Subal, your adventurous friend Krishna has gotten us into this predicament. We'll be lucky if we escape with our lives." And as more and more angry gopis, armed with sticks, crowded into the court, it's really nice, the boys huddled protectively around Krishna, who was still spellbound by Queen Radha's beauty, composure, and regal bearing. Her beauty, her composure, and her regal bearing. And at that moment, Sri Radha gracefully raised her left hand to silence the court. And then she spoke, quote, "Although these guests have entered this court under false pretenses, they have not been privy to state secrets. Furthermore, since Shama Gopi is actually a prince in a friendly province, he and his entourage should be given a reception befitting royalty, regardless of how they managed to enter our midst." She's still referring to Krishna as Shama Gopi. She said he's actually a prince from a friendly province. She goes on, "We should offer a seat of honor to Prince Govinda and a feast to his intimate friends. In this way, we will have properly greeted our guests and significantly strengthened our political alliances." Now, when the cowherd boys heard that, a feast, a feast, we should offer Prince Govinda and his intimate friends a feast, they were just total bliss, total bliss. So they immediately left with the Minister of Foreign Affairs to a beautiful grove adjoining the kitchen. And there they very quickly took off their disguises, washed their feet, hands, and mouths, and sat down at small tables. And to their great delight, Champakalata, Saki, and her friends, and all these other gopis we've been discussing today, they all came around and they served the cowherd boys a huge feast. After which the boys slept soundly under a very large banyan tree. Now, meanwhile, Krishna had also, it's described, abandoned his gopi identity. And the same maidservants who had dressed Sri Radha dressed Krishna in a way befitting a prince of Vrindavan, the prince of Vrindavan, with a royal crown and everything. Then it's very nicely described, Radha and Krishna, the king and queen of divine love, went on an extended walk, just the two of them, through the very beautiful, endless gardens of flowers in the beautiful forest of Karnavan, finally enjoying and relishing each other's association. Hare Krishna. That's the end of the fast time. What a fast time. Oh, Krishna. Well, I hope all of you enjoyed that, and I'm sure that it definitely purified the heart. And maybe there's some rumblings in your hearts of, awakening of some real appreciation, affection, or love for Vrindavan and Radha and Krishna and the cowherd boys and Govardhan Hill and the river Jamuna and Radhakund and Shamakund and on and on. Our real home. That's where we belong. So today, I would like to end with the priceless words of Srila Rupa Goswami in his prayer, Utkalika Valari. I mentioned that's one of my favorite, and I'm sure many of you as well. Utkalika Valari. We will recite 17 of the 70 verses. Otherwise, it would take a couple hours. But these verses are very relevant to the pastime today, where we end up hearing that Radha and Krishna are the king and queen of divine love in Sri Vrindavan Dham. And Srila Rupa Goswami prays to them in a most wonderful way. So please allow me. Overcome with yearnings and crying in the middle of Vrindavan forest, I shall now reveal the deep mark burning tears have made in my heart. O Vrindavan forest, who among your devoted servants has not already attained the path of supreme transcendental bliss? I humbly beg you, please reveal in my heart the best way to attain my king and queen. Please be kind to me. O Queen Vrinda, both Shruti and Smriti proclaim that Lord Murari eternally enjoys pastimes with his beloved in your forest. Knowing this, I bow down before your feet. Please be merciful to me. Please make the tree of my desires bear fruit. O virtuous Queen Vrinda, this person begs your permission to present his appeal before your king and queen, whose feet he has long yearned in his heart to attain. Please cast your merciful glance upon me. Please be kind. O king, whose transcendental form is more splendid than the blossoming blue lotus flower. O queen, whose splendid beauty has stolen the glory of gold. O king, dressed in silk garments as splendid as lightning. O queen, dressed in beautiful garments as splendid as musk. O king, whose splendid sweetness surpasses Lord Narayan. O queen, who fills both the goddess of fortune and the sweet, beautiful girls of Braja with wonder. O king, who is an expanding mountain of the jewels of eternal virtues unattainable by outsiders. O queen, who possesses a treasure of transcendental virtues that stun with wonder the hearts of all virtuous girls. O king, who is the regal sapphire crown of the peerless youths of Braja. O queen, who is the jasmine crown of the splendid girls of Gokula in this world. O king, whose heart is an ocean where the makara fish of Sri Radha swims. O queen, whose heart is a moon that contains the deer of Lord Krishna. O king, whose mind is maddened by the fragrance of your beloved. O queen, whose senses are captured by the fragrance of your beloved. O king, whose flute is very eager to sing the glories of Sri Radha, the deity of pure love. O queen, whose tongue tastes the sweetness of chanting the glories of Lord Mukunda, the joy of the world. O king, the sweetness of whose lotus eyes traps the swan of the heart of she who is the crown of Braja's girls. O queen, the net of whose sidelong glance expertly catches the regal fish of the prince of Braja's heart. O king, whose flute music is a cup for drinking the ocean of the eternal patience of the daughter of the Gopa king's friend. O queen, whose very graceful songs enchant the deer of the heart of he who enchants the entire world. O king, who when you hear the name Radhika, forgets all playful arts. O queen, who when you hear the two syllables Krishna, becomes stunned and motionless. O son of the king of the gopis, O daughter of the best man in Gokula, bowing down and placing folded hands above his head, this unfortunate person begs you for a certain gift. O king and queen, the lakes of whose hearts are filled by the swiftly flowing nectar mountain streams of your great mercy, please be kind to this wicked person. Please show him the luster of the transcendental happiness that is the guarantee of being able to see you in the future. O king, dark with a splendid complexion. O queen, dark with youthful beauty. O king, golden with transcendental fame. O queen, golden with a splendidly beautiful complexion. O king and queen, who are the handsome crowns of everyone, please eternally display your sweetness within my heart. Oh, Krishna, isn't that wonderful? And that's only 17 verses out of all glories to Sri Rupa Goswami. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, the revealer of the Dham. I have nothing more to say. What can I say after the words of Sri Rupa Goswami? Only to assure you that I'll be back in a couple days. Again, I'll go through the treasure chest of the 60 billion holy places and all the pastimes in Vrindavan and pick out a few and share them with all of you wonderful devotees. So, thank you so much. See you in a couple days. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Srimati Radharani ki, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Mayapur Dham ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Goloka Vrindavan Dham ki, Go Premanandi, Jai Jai Sri Radhe Sharm. Thank you.